Hey guys, what's going on? Hope you're all doing great today. So we've got some interesting updates to talk about in the world of Hollow Knight Silksong. Yeah, you heard that right. Team Cherry just pushed out a new public beta update, patch 4, and it's got fans buzzing again, especially those who've been watching every small movement around Silksong for what feels like forever. I wanted to sit down and unpack everything in a casual way. We go back, kind of like we're just hanging out and chatting about it, because this patch might look small on paper, but there's actually quite a bit going on under the surface once you really look at it. So patch 4, officially known as version 1.0.29120, has started rolling out for those who are part of the public beta branch. If you've been following Silksong since the early builds, you probably know that these beta updates tend to hit Steam first, usually as optional downloads, before they go live to everyone else. This patch builds on the earlier 1.0.28954 test build, which was already pretty well received for what it changed. Now, the main highlight here might sound small, but for a lot of players, it's actually a quality of life improvement that smooths out the experience in ways you can really feel once you're in-game. One of the standout changes in this update revolves around the Multibinder tool. If you've played around with it before, you probably noticed it was a bit sluggish or awkward in certain scenarios, especially when you paired it with the Shaman Crest. The bind time felt off, kind of dragging longer than it should, and it threw off the rhythm of healing and movement during fights. That's been fixed now. The Multibinder's behavior feels much snappier, more consistent, and the best part? Stage 1 of the Multibinder can now clean muck maggots. Yeah, that might sound like a small tweak, but it actually changes how you approach certain fights or exploration areas where those things tend to clutter your path or interrupt your flow. It's one of those changes that feels subtle at first, but after a few encounters, you start to realize how much smoother everything feels. And while we're on the subject of smoothness, controller handling has gotten some love too. Team Cherry has switched over to Unity's input system, which is a pretty significant under-the-hood change. If you're someone who uses a DualSense controller, or even the newer DualSense Edge, this is going to be a noticeable improvement. The detection issues that were happening before, especially on Mac and Steam Deck, seem to be ironed out. It just picks up the controller faster, the mapping feels more natural, and it's way less finicky about which input type you're using. For those who don't know, switching to Unity's input system isn't a tiny fix. It's a foundational change that can affect everything from how your buttons register to how responsive the analog sticks feel during combat. This is the kind of move that's done when a studio is preparing for a smoother long-term maintenance path or when they're polishing up the base before launch or major updates. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting sign. Of course, no patch would be complete without a bunch of bug fixes, and patch 4 has those too. There are some important ones worth noting. One issue where Hornet would lose her plasmified state when traveling through Bellway has been addressed. That bug was one of those weird ones where things felt off if you noticed it mid-run. It kind of broke immersion and flow, and it's nice to see it resolved. Another fix targets an issue with sticks not giving rosaries after receiving the Queen's Egg. These are the kinds of small polish updates that tell you Team Cherry's been carefully combing through edge cases and player feedback, tightening up all the little cracks that might have gone unnoticed in the early stages. Now, here's something that got a lot of attention in this patch, the new implementation of Simplified Chinese translation. This update actually incorporates a fan-led project known as Team Cart Fix, which reworks and refines the Chinese localization that originally shipped with the earlier builds. Basically, it's a collaboration that keeps the core names intact while addressing inconsistencies, awkward phrasing, and terminology that didn't sit right with native speakers. It's a big deal because localization isn't just about swapping out words. It's about keeping the tone, emotion, and personality of the game intact for another culture. By bringing in the fan team and reworking the text, Team Cherry is showing that they're listening closely to the community, especially to those who've been vocal about translation accuracy. It's also worth noting that this rework isn't final. It's an evolving project. The team has said that it'll keep improving with feedback, so it's more of a living update than a one-and-done patch. That's really cool, and it adds to the sense that Silksong's world is being refined piece by piece. For those who want to check it out themselves, the process is simple. You can right-click the game in your Steam library, go to Properties, then the Betas section, and switch to the Public Beta branch. Steam should handle the rest automatically. Once it's downloaded, your build should show as version 1.0.29120, and you'll be good to go. It's a small extra step, but it's worth doing if you're the kind of player who likes to experience these updates early and see how the game evolves with each pass. Now, I want to touch a bit on why this patch, small as it might seem, actually feels meaningful. Silksong has always been this game wrapped in mystery and long stretches of silence, where every little movement from Team Cherry sparks speculation. And when updates like this land, it's not just about the fixes themselves, it's about what they represent. This patch shows continued active development and polish. The switch to the new input system isn't something you do lightly if you weren't actively preparing your engine for bigger things. Likewise, refining translation and bug fixes around advanced tools like the Multibinder suggests that the core game loop is stable enough for fine-tuning. It's like watching the final gears get oiled before a machine starts up completely. And let's be real, fans have been waiting a long time for Silksong. Every time an update hits the public beta branch, there's this surge of excitement, people rushing to data mine or dissect even the tiniest clues about new areas, characters, or mechanics. But here's the thing, Team Cherry's not the kind of studio to rush. They've shown again and again that they'd rather polish and refine every detail until it's perfect, rather than push something out half-baked. So a patch like this, where the main focus is performance, input, and localization polish, is a great sign. It tells us that they're in that stage of final optimization, making sure that when the full release hits, it feels seamless across every platform. Let's talk a bit more about the feel of the update in gameplay terms, because that's what matters most at the end of the day. The improved multi-binder response makes healing during fast-paced encounters feel more natural, almost like how nail arts in the original Hollow Knight clicked perfectly once you had the timing down. The responsiveness improvement through the new input system enhances that connection you feel when you're pulling off combos or reacting mid-combat. There's less of that subtle delay that sometimes threw players off, especially on non-standard controllers. It just feels tighter, smoother, and that's huge for a game as precision-focused as Silksong. And that Chinese translation update, honestly, it's one of the most community-focused moves we've seen from Team Cherry in a while. It's a sign that they're not just listening to English-speaking fans, but taking global feedback seriously. The Chinese fan base for Hollow Knight is enormous, and getting the language right means a lot. When you think about how text and lore contribute to the atmosphere in Hollow Knight, any mistranslation or awkward phrasing can pull you right out of that immersion. So bringing in fan translators who live and breathe the tone of the game, that's a smart and respectful move. It also strengthens the relationship between Team Cherry and their audience, something that's become more important the longer Silksong's development stretches on. I think it's also worth mentioning how much this patch shows Team Cherry's philosophy. They could have easily waited to bundle these changes into a bigger release, but instead, they're pushing smaller updates publicly, letting the community test, report, and engage with them in real time. That transparency, even in small doses, helps maintain trust. It's not just about saying, we're still working on it. It's showing tangible progress that you can actually feel in the game itself. If you're wondering what this means for the future, I'd say it's another positive step toward the full release. They're clearing technical debt, improving usability, enhancing localization, and fixing bugs that affect core gameplay flow. All of that points toward a product that's nearing readiness. Of course, no one outside Team Cherry knows the exact launch window yet, but every update like this suggests they're ticking boxes that usually happen near the end of development. So, yeah, overall, Patch 4 might look like just a handful of fixes and one big localization tweak, but when you step back and look at the bigger picture, it's a meaningful sign of progress. It's another layer of polish on top of what's already shaping up to be one of the most anticipated indie sequels of all time.